Good morning, friend. How are you?
Are we live?
Perfect. We are live.
Okay.
Yes. Um, Good morning, and thank you for choosing to join us today for a VAWMA Chats, our weekly Tuesday morning chat. I, of course, am the co-host, Kat. You may know me from my live streams on Live with Advantage on twitch.tv/Live with Advantage. I am a transformational life coach as well as executive coach. So, if any of these thoughts ring true to you that you may want to start your own business, I can definitely help you get on your way. And with me, as always, is my friend James, who is actually the brainchild. This whole project was a brainchild of his. This as started off as his idea that I really bought into, and I think it's going to be very successful once we get things rolling. So I'm going to hand things over to you, James, and let us know who you are, what you do, where we can find you, and what's up with VAWMA.
Well, hello and welcome from the sunny metropolis of Owen Sound, located snugly in the snowy region of northern southwestern Ontario. My name is James, as Kat has introduced, and I'm a proud supporter of the VAWMA idea. VAWMA is an acronym, stands for the Voluntary Association for Work and Mutual Aid. And what we are is hopefully somebody can find his notes where he put them. There he goes. What we are is about four different things, all sort of like melded into one, or at least the vision is to be that. We're a mutual aid network, first and foremost. We're a group of friends that are basically saying, you know what, I'm tired of the capitalist, everybody out for themselves sort of way of doing things. I want to live my life in such a way where I do check in with my friends and make sure they're okay. And if they aren't, I want to be able to do what I can to make sure that they can be okay, because that's what decent human beings do. And I'm tired of the narrative of like, well, you just leave people alone, or don't ask, don't tell, or leave it up to them to figure things out, because things are messy, and you never know what's going to happen. And anyway, so at our base foundation, we are a group of friends that are like recognizing we need to get together and we need to do things in order to survive. And the more the merrier. From that, we recognize that we're bringing to the table our labor as our what we bring, our skill sets, our talents, our abilities, the things that we know how to do, the things that uh, we've done various through various times in life. Um, Sorry, I'm just gonna
That's okay.
there. Yeah, but we from recognizing that we have our labor that we bring to the table, we create a collective organization that we organize within ourselves, that we negotiate within ourselves. What it is that we're going to pay ourselves when the time comes, what it is that we're going to do for benefits, how it is that we're going to run the schedule, how it is that we're going to organize the structure in such a way that makes sense for us, the people on the ground that are doing the work. And that's going to lead us to the next step, which is creating the businesses that will hire us and will provide employment, jobs, and provide living wages,
Mm-hmm.
as well as a schedule that we can control. As and this is the dream of Alma. Ultimately, is to create a network of cooperative businesses that are worker directed and community owned.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, we will become the fourth aspect of what we are, which is like, I struggle with this terminology. Somebody corrected me on it once, but I can't remember what they corrected me to. But just to get the idea, kind of like an umbrella corporation or a federation of cooperative businesses that all pool their resources together and look out for each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's the basic vision in a nutshell, and that's the idea for who we hope to become. And from there, there's been a lot of discussion recently, kind of behind the scenes, about possibilities of what we could do as a business. And I'm very excited
Yeah.
to kind of slowly disseminate as time goes by. Use that as an example of how you can create your own voluntary association for work and mutual aid network within your own local ridings, and get worker-owned or worker-directed community-owned businesses up and running and working for you. Um, and so to that end, the the dream here is to not just say, hey, wouldn't it be nice if we can do things? The dream is to actually become like a numbered corporation within the CRA's, logbooks,
Mm-hmm.
generating money, not just for ourselves, but for our local economy. And we want to look as good as the box stores do, but
Mm-hmm.
instead of funneling the money out of our local economies, we want to distribute it amongst everybody who's helping to create it as much as possible.
Right.
Shorten our supply chains, buy local, quite literally. And if local can't compete with the wholesalers, well, let's figure out why.
Yeah.
And if it's economies of scale, well, how do we scale up our economy? Like, um, different things to explore there.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of things to learn, and I'm sure part of this, and part of the whole reason why we're doing this podcast, of course, is to include as many people along the journey as possible so that they can see the mistakes we're making. And I
Yeah.
suppose we should put a caveat that, as we go along with this, we're probably going to make a lot of mistakes along the way. So if you're taking notes, just put little asterisks in the margin there saying we're still learning, and you're
Yeah.
coming along on this journey with us. So we're
Yeah.
glad to have you. And yeah, we're taking a page from the old punk DIY ethic and looking around, saying, well, no one else has started a worker-owned cooperative network in my area. Guess it's up to me to do it.
Yeah, and I think
And
that's actually a really good segue into what I wanted to kind of focus on this week. Last week we
mm,
were kind of doing a review of the 4 week event that we had created back in November, and how did the 4 week event come to light? What were the guest speakers? How did we do things, etc., etc., etc. Um, and the one thing that I wanted to talk about this week that I think is another cornerstone is the education portion. Blah, blah. Apparently, today is Monday, part two. The education portion of things. So, I personally grew up on a farm that was part of the farmers co op. And so, the co op that I know of in my head is the farmers co-op. You are a
mhm,
farmer, you are part of said farmers co-op, and so therefore if you need supplies, if you need grain, if you need chlorine, if you need whatever you need, you can go to the farmers co-op and you can buy it at a discount. If you are no longer a farmer but you want to support said farmers, you can still go to the farmers co-op, but you don't get the same farmer discount because you're not a farmer. You
mhm,
are
mhm,
supporting said farmers, but you are not a farmer, and so therefore you don't have the discount. Another way of putting this towards um, just like a metaphor type thing is the Costco membership. If you
mm,
have a Costco membership, you can go into Costco and you can buy things at the Costco member price. If you are not a member of Costco, you can still shop at Costco, but you have to pay full price,
mm,
which then once, gets you the I am going to pay my membership fees, therefore giving me a discount and therefore being able to contribute to said discounts. Um, but what I noticed when I was talking to people about starting a co-op, the first thing that and this is where my transformational coaching kind of comes into play, because this is where things are mapped in our unconscious. This is where neurolinguistics come into play, and this is where a lot of people are going to be like, wait, what? Um, Depending on how we have been exposed to co ops and how
Mm,
we have been mapped to understand what a co op is will
mm,
also give us the determination of how a co op works. So,
mm,
in my sense, I'm going to use two different conversations that I had with somebody. In my in my experience, I grew up on a co-op farm. We were
mm,
part of the co op until we moved into city proper, but we were still able to shop at said co op because we knew that it existed, and we knew that because we were no longer farmer, we had to pay full price, but we were still supporting said co op. Awesome. That's great.
mm.
Person I was having conversation with, they had mapped the words co op to ghetto housing. Let's call a spade a spade. They
Yeah.
took it as co op housing. They took it as low income housing complex that were called the co op because it was subsidized to low income housing and they didn't always have the best visuals. And
Mm,
let's again back up, when you see something for the first time and you map it,
yep.
what a co-op building looks like. It looks like trash. That's
Mm,
what co-op buildings look like, and that's what that means. Unfortunately,
right.
that's how neurolinguistics roll. That is how our unconscious maps things in our
Mm,
head.
yep. Word association and stuff.
Exactly. Ding, ding, ding,
Mm,
ding, ding. Shining star. So, with that word association, when I said, me and a friend of mine are thinking of starting a co op, they were like, whoa, okay, so first off, you have to be careful with co-ops because you don't want to fall into the dirty, low income
mhm.
housing. That's not even what I thought. That is what their impression of a co-op is. There is a large population that doesn't know what a cooperative business is. So
Yes.
that is what I would like to start with. Um,
Okay.
and let's do this in a elevator pitch and then we'll unpack. So give me the elevator pitch of what a co-op business is.
In a nutshell, it's individuals coming together to do things together and spelt out legal way. The cooperative is a kind of like a limited liability corporation in that it becomes its own legal entity, and then at that point, no individuals aren't on the chopping block to be sued. At that point, you can't lose your house, sort of idea. Um, uh, your individual property still remains your own while you have a
Right.
buy-in into something that is larger than just yourself. And that's essentially what a cooperative is. It's by contrast to a traditional uh, uh, capitalist structure or traditional joint stock option limited liability company.
Mm-hmm.
The main difference between a cooperative and a limited liability company is that it's one member, one vote in a cooperative, whereas in a limited liability company, you get as many votes as you can purchase shares. Uh, so in a scenario with a limited liability company, if you're in a situation where you have more money to buy more shares, then you can have more votes and more power. And more of the profit comes back to you because you're the one calling the shots. And for
Right.
some reason, the people calling shots always bring the money back to them. Who knew?
Right.
Within a cooperative, it because it's one member, one vote. It's one member, one share, and within that share, there is wiggle room. There's something we like to call patronage, which is the determining factor, or how we determine how we split up any surplus that's generated between the people that help generate it. And at that point, we're now entering into a territory where I can think of at least four different distinct types of cooperatives that you can create. You've already identified two. The first two being producer, which is what you described with the farmers coming together, pooling their resources in order to buy feed at a better
Mm-hmm.
price, or buy farm equipment at a better price, or be able to sell their produce at a more distributed way and thus get a better price for their food. That's one way of doing a cooperative business. It does have some pitfalls, especially if you happen to be an employee. Your relationship between the producer and yourself as an employee is still the same as that under capitalism, where they're the employer, you're the employee, you're the wage slave if you're their employee. Not ideal, but it is better for people involved. The other kind of cooperative is a housing cooperative, which is actually one of the very few avenues that people on the lower income scale have in order to be able to hope to even create or get housing. Because if I individually have a bad credit score, and you individually have a bad credit score, and dozen of us or so have bad credit scores, so none of us qualify for mortgages. Well, we can all pool our what resources we do have together, uh, create the cooperative, a
Yeah.
kind of limited liability corporation, and an institution, or that's what I'm looking for. Doesn't matter. Um, uh, it'll become the entity that will then apply for the mortgage for, instead of an individual house for me, it'll be an apartment complex for me and all
That's
my
right.
friends that we got together, and that creates the housing corporation cooperative.
Hmm.
And it is because it's one of the only way poor people in this country can actually ever hope of getting a home. It does have a reputation for, as you say, creating ghettos. And that's unfortunate. It's not inherent to cooperatives. Property management is not something that is, once you become a cooperative, well, I'm sorry, we can't manage your property anymore. It's in the law. you
Yeah,
know,
right. Yeah.
that's up to the individuals who are forming that housing uh,
Yeah.
uh, cooperative to determine how much of their rents or how much of their buy-in go to um, property maintenance.
Property
And
maintenance,
if they're not
property fees. Yeah.
exactly, and you can easily structure cooperatives very similar to how you do condominiums, to how you do uh, other apartment
Hmm.
complexes, where there is a budget for maintenance and standards to be adhered to, across the board. But again, that's all up to the members of the cooperative to form themselves, and that becomes, I think, both the beauty and the pit trap of democracy in the workplace.
Hmm.
In that, if you get a bunch of unmotivated people, things might look rather unmotivated after a while. Um,
And you
which
know
is
what?
entropy.
Absolutely. And that actually is another good segue into the the other sticking point that I personally noticed when we were doing our 4-week event
Hmm,
was the not I blanket statemented as voter apathy. Um,
hmm,
and the metaphor I'm going to use is the voting system versus what the actual populist belief is, only because a lot of people are going to be able to relate to this and it's easier to visualize opposed to. So, we had mentioned last week that we in Owen Sound had our first Pride Parade
hmm.
2 years ago, something to
I
that
think
effect.
it was either 2018 or 2019. It was before the pandemic.
It was before, yeah, it was before
Yeah,
COVID.
yeah,
And there was an amazing turnout. There was
yeah. Over
very
2,000
little,
people, I believe.
exactly. And there was very little protests. There was very little shenanigans. There was very little pushback. There
Hmm.
was, of course, because that's the nature of the beast, but there was very little of it. And yet, we live in a stereotypical, highly conservative riding. And so, to have that physical outcome to the Pride Parade for the first time, and I'm sure the next time it's going to be bigger and the next time it's going to be bigger, in a riding that had a very vocal conservative leader, if you will,
Hmm.
goes back to, well, how can you have this kind of turnout for Pride when you have a member in parliament that is against same sex marriage or same sex union?
Yeah, who
To
was it?
which I
Was Larry
say,
Miller, wasn't it?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
To
Ugh.
which we look at the votes. Who voted him in?
Right, and I actually have some data with regards to all that, not from the previous the elections, but from 2022, the
Sure.
provincial election.
Yeah.
We've got some data on that. I got some data on the municipal elections as well, so we can look at all of that stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Right. And so to
So
that point, to just kind of elevator pitch this,
mhm.
30% of the eligible voters went out and actually voted. Okay, 30%. Those 30%,
I think it was in the province this past year. It was 43%.
43%,
Hmm.
30%.
It was a very.
So,
It was the historically. It was the lowest turnout we've had in
exactly.
Ontario pretty much ever.
Exactly.
Municipally, it was a lot lower. It may have been. It was in the 30 percentile for the municipal election. Yeah.
And so when I started actually looking into those metrics and try to figure out why do those matrices actually, how is this affecting things?
Yeah.
When people were asked, you know, why did you vote? Yes, no. If yes, perfect. If no, why not? It
Hmm.
doesn't matter. My vote
Ah. Yeah.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because
Yeah.
I could vote for whoever I want to, but this person's going to get in anyway. So they don't bother. Their voice, they feel their voice is not heard. Bring that
Yeah.
same example to the workplace.
Hmm.
I worked for a very large big box company that uses a very close framework to um, a co-op where you participate in the profit shares of said company. You don't have a union to back you, and so they are constantly asking for worker feedback. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? How do you feel about this? And when I was an assistant manager, and I mean assistant manager as in store manager me,
Hmm.
um, the biggest thing that I was always told by any of my associates was that our voice doesn't matter. We can tell you what's wrong until we are blue in the face. There's nothing you can do about it because the upper management are going to say, that's great, they don't agree, carry on.
Yeah.
And so when we start bringing that topic into a co op, saying, if you're part of the co op, you can participate in the profits, you can participate in the surplus, you can
Hmm.
help how things are run. The instant look I get because people don't have a very good poker face is the audible eye roll and say, sure, okay. So, how do you sell that to voter apathy, to the mentality we have today, the
Hmm.
workers that we have today? They want to work, they just don't want to work for you. Why do they want to work for us? Why? How can we change that apathy of my voice actually does matter, and I'm going to work for a company that does pay attention to what I say because I am a member of the co op? How do
Hmm.
you sell that so that people can say, you know what? I might not vote in the election, but I'm going to go work for VAWMA because I know that my voice actually matters.
We could probably spend a good hour just exploring the whole voter apathy thing, and maybe we will at some point.
Sure.
I think you've hit the hammer on the head with your assessment that people don't vote because there's nothing for which for them to vote that will actually affect their individual interests on a day-to-day basis, or at least that's how they feel. And I think part of that is by design. There's, for my money, there's a right-wing agenda which seeks to disenfranchise the working class from voting, or participating in the political process by virtue just because if the working class ever woke up and became conscious of their role within society,
Yeah.
that would be it. The capitalists would would lose tomorrow, right? And therein lies, and but that brings us to the question that has uh, been at the core of organizing labor from time immemorial. Is like, how do you get the working class to wake up and become aware of its situation under capitalism? How do you, like, I remember the first time someone explained to me the labor theory of value, it seemed incredibly straightforward. Of course, this is how things work.
Yeah.
Somebody owns the stuff that we use to make all the stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and they get to decide, what happens with it, and they hire people to work that stuff. They pay them a wage, and then they send them home when they're done working on using the stuff that the person owns
Yeah.
to create stuff. And then I, the person who owns all the stuff, gets to turn around and sell what I hired that person to make, and I get to pocket the money that I sell. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. There's no emotion involved in it. It's just an equation. It's just, a description of what happens, and the emotions come in when you realize that uh, our entire society has been created to benefit the person who owns the means of production, in such a way that they get to dictate to the workers what their living conditions will be, how much they can expect to get paid, and be happy to be, to receive that meager payment, even if that payment doesn't cover the cost of living anymore. You should still be happy to receive that payment because we're always lobbying to make it less. And if that's not bad enough, is if it wasn't bad enough that they're always lobbying to make it less, that at the same time they're also they're the ones that control what prices we pay for the stuff that they're selling, and they're
That's
always
correct.
constantly jacking those prices up.
Cost
Um,
to
and
sell.
and they say, well, if we gave workers more money, that would drive inflation up. Meanwhile, we're
That's
going
right.
to drive up the prices of the stuff that we're selling to you. I mean, it's insane.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the system we live under. Okay, so I get it that within that system, when people vote, nobody's voting, nobody's running to change that system fundamentally, within our society. And even if they were, I'm not too sure that they could. It's so entrenched, it's so powerful, and it's so not just Canada, it's the States, it's
Yeah.
Europe, it's China, it's
Mm-hmm.
Australia, it's the entire continent of Africa and South America. It's like it's everywhere. You
Well,
can't
and
go.
that's the
Yeah.
biggest example that we can show is that the same product that is made in Canada is 10 times more expensive if you buy the one that's made from China because the cost to sell is 3 times more.
Right. And one of the things we're going to be doing as we go on with this podcast is we're going to be exploring these aspects as well.
Absolutely.
um, and yeah. Now I've done one of those classic things where I started with a thought, and
And
the
then I
train
cut
has
you
left.
off very
That's okay.
unceremoniously.
Well, and there is still like an open thought as well that is still waving around in the back of
Yeah,
my brain, where it's like I started describing like the four different cooperative things out there. I got through two, and then we changed topics.
which is okay because I mean this is based on education. This week was based
Sure.
on education, and so
Mm,
we brought to fact that the two main concepts that
mm,
people are attached to are when you think of co-op, I instantly think farmer co-op because that's
yeah,
what I was taught.
which
A
is a
lot of
producer
people think
co-op.
exactly.
Yeah,
A lot of people think housing co-op because
yeah.
that's what was imprinted. It's a visual of the word imprinted
Mhm.
on our head. Um,
And
and so
and
this
yeah,
to
and
bring education to the different types of co-op, you also I think you have to start at the beginning of the difference between the capitalist where I decide how much you're going to make based
Hmm.
on what the cost to sell is. Where
Right.
in the co op is we as a collective are going to decide how much the cost to sell is because we as a collective want to make a profit.
And for people for whom the idea of collective is a little too hippie, yeah, we're a democracy, um,
Yep.
uh, and contrasted by a dictatorship, which
Mhm.
is what you get
Mhm.
under
Mhm.
capitalism.
Yep.
And if you're going to be a part of a democracy, it does require an educational component. You have to learn and understand how businesses operate on a basic fundamental level. Even if you're not going to be the CEO, even if you're not going to be the accountant, even if you're not going to be do bookkeeping or anything like that, so long as you understand the basics that sort of go into it, i.e., we need to have customers so that we can sell products so that we can cover our expenses, and we need to sell so many product a day in order to break even. And
Yep.
if we're not breaking even, then we're losing money, and that eventually is going to be coming out of our pockets if we run out of cash flow. So we need to understand that if we're going to be in business together. I want to be in business together with people who understand that they can't just sit around on their butts, picking their nose, because they're now a part owner.
Yep.
Somebody else can do the work. No, 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 we're not bourgeois. We recognize that everybody needs to do a little bit, and that's what we're doing.
Mhm.
And when it's your time to be on, it's your time to be on. This is
Mhm.
this is this is a job. And the thing is, we've already proved that we can do these jobs. We do it for capitalists all the time. What we're doing now is we're proving it that we can do it for ourselves. And I think all we need to do is set up the right structure in order to do it. And an integral component to it is, like we've been covering here, education, reframing our mindsets, learning how to be in control of my life in the context of somebody else is in control of their life, and we're both agreeing that we want to go in the same direction. Um, and that's what this cooperative venture is. It's a bunch of people, individuals, saying, okay, we all agree we want to get from point A to point B, and we're going to do it together. And this is how we do it. We're just going to spell out when we have conflicts. This is how we're going to resolve them. When we have differences of opinion, this is the line over which people are fine to their opinion, and this is the line over which your opinion starts to affect the lives of others. And we need to make sure that we understand that you're free to be who you are and you think as you will. But the minute that your freedom of expression starts impeding on my ability to be free and express who I am, we're going to have a compromise at some point.
Right.
And that's okay. We should be focusing on disagreeing but not being disagreeable.
Right. Exactly. And I think
And
that I we need to make that like a sub mission statement.
disagree but don't be disagreeable.
That's it. Yeah, that needs to
Sure.
be our motto.
Sure. And, and I mean, so to help facilitate stuff like this within our organization, I'm hoping that there would be three main aspects of continuing education that goes on. And actually, before that, if I may, I might
Yeah.
just take this opportunity to segue into talking about the seven cooperative principles, which
Ah.
were originally six cooperative principles, founded by the outline of which was founded by the Rochdale Society of Equitable Pioneers, or
Mhm.
something to that effect, back in 1844. I don't know the exact date that they came up with the principles. It was something that sort of evolved out of what they were doing,
Mhm.
but they're brilliant. I'm just going to read off the seven as they've come to be developed.
Yeah.
I think there was even a proposal there for a little bit to have an eighth at one point as well, but we're not quite there yet. Boom. I'm just going to bring in my thing here. Actually, can I share my screen?
I believe you can. I think all you have to do is hit share question mark,
Perfect.
I
So why
think.
don't I do that for the people at home
Okay.
and see what this ends up looking like. Uh, nope, not that one. Not that one. That one. Boom.
Let's
So
hold hold
A
on.
brief
Stand by.
overview of the cooperative principles.
Stand
Sure.
by. Think
Hmm.
we can do
Take this opportunity to
that.
take a drink from our coffee.
Nope,
One
that
of these
didn't work.
days, I'm hoping to have a coffee shop that I can buy coffee at a drive-through from our cooperative coffee shop there. So it'd
Let's
be fun.
see if I do that. If that triggers that. Nope, that turned you off. Oh, I don't want to do that.
Oh,
We're
mercy.
gonna show you on screen. So it's not letting
That's fine.
me put you up on the screen, unfortunately. Oh,
That's
because we can
fine.
only have one guest at a time. Free
We're
Streamlabs.
learning, folks.
We are.
This is a brand new podcast,
Yeah.
little streaming venture that we're doing in partnership with each other. And I guess YouTube in a way. That's
Yeah.
fun.
I mean, we're
Um,
streaming. We're streaming. We're
we
streaming.
are. So, so there are seven cooperative principles, is what it boils down to. And these are not in any particular order, but the order does have a certain logic to it. And it starts out with point number one, being voluntary and open membership. Point number two, democratic member control. Point number three, member economic participation. Point number four, autonomy and independence. Point number five, education, training, and information. We're going to talk about that in just a bit moment here.
Mm-hmm.
And points number six are cooperation among cooperatives. And point number seven is concern for community. That's a more recently added on one.
Ah,
And I'm sure we'll have a chance to talk about that one of these days. But point number five for cooperative education, this is from the Ontario Cooperative Association's website. We'll have a link
okay.
to the doodly doo in the
Absolutely.
doodly doo there for this. And it's on point five, education, training, and information. It has this to say: cooperatives provide education and training for their members, elected representatives, managers, and employees so that they can contribute effectively to the development of their cooperatives. They inform the general public, particularly young people and opinion leaders, about the nature and benefit of cooperation. One of the simplest ways to educate members, staff, and volunteers involved with a co op is to ensure that there is adequate orientation and training for new participants in the co op that includes an overview of the cooperative model and what being a co op is all about. Information provided to participants should outline how the co op works, the cooperative principles, and other information that allows people to participate fully in the operations and governance of the co op. Co-ops in particular, associations of co-ops, co-ops, in particular associations of co-ops,
Grammar.
like the Ontario
Grammar, don't be
Cooperative
a psycho.
Association or of the Cooperative Housing Federation of Canada, also work to educate the public and elected representatives about the co-op model. This assists in raising awareness about the cooperative way of doing business and obtaining support from the government on behalf of the sector. And these are all true. But one of the things that we also include within, sorry, and I should say to that end, of informing, training, and educating our members, there are three essential states within VAWMA, the Voluntary Association for Work and Mutual Aid, where we would essentially be focusing on education. The first aspect has to do with our both our consumer members and our worker members. I didn't get to explain what the difference between a worker and a consumer cooperative model is. We'll go into
So
that eventually.
well no, it's
Mhm.
cool. We'll put a pin right here. What is a
So
worker and what is a the other one?
right? So in this particular case, the workers are going to be the ones doing most of the heavy lifting in terms of the operation of the business. So it's
Mm-hmm.
vital that they understand the nature of their business, number one, but also understand all the variables that are happening in their business. So on an ongoing, regular basis, we would meet at least once a month. There would be a team of leaders that would meet daily, if not weekly, keeping an eye on the numbers, how much, how much product are we moving, how much are customers spending with us, what are our margins, are we breaking even, are we above, are we below, what do we
Right.
need to do to improve sales, what do we need to do, because all that goes to our bottom line.
Yes.
And so, a huge aspect of running any business is being aware of what's going on. And if we're going to run a democratic enterprise where the workers are going to be partially in control of determining what the policy is and what we do on the floor, they need to be informed. And so that's aspect number one. So there, within our organization, there will be regular meetings where you, as a worker member, are brought up to speed on the state and nature of the business. Point number two um, is where we have best practices. So
Mm.
it's not just enough to be aware of like how the business is doing now. We also need to understand how the business can run better in theory,
Mm.
and learn how to apply that and work in our own as individual members within the cooperative.
Right.
It's we're not just employees bringing home a paycheck. You know, this isn't just a job, so to speak.
Yeah.
We are member owners. We have a
It's a
stake
sense
in
of
this.
ownership.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that not everybody wants that. Not everybody wants that kind of responsibility. Not everybody wants that kind of control, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, VAWMA is not necessarily for everybody in terms of the member ownership model. However, like I've said previous, we would have a vehicle or a way that any VAWMA member as a consumer sort of automatically gets to be part of our union if they want to work with us. And so any extra shifts, any extra jobs that are left over after our member owners have gone through the calendar and taken all the shifts that they want, those will be open to members of VAWMA to join and pick up those shifts, provided that they know how to do the job. Which brings us to the
Right.
third area of education, which is training. And one of the things that we would do on a regular basis, just like in the same way, like at least once a month, all the workers of a business would get together and learn how the business is doing. And at
Mm.
least once a quarter, all the members of that business will get together and learn how to do their business better in terms of best practices.
Yeah.
Um, at least once a month, every cooperative business that, or at least once a quarter, every cooperative business that is uh, a part of VAMA
Mm-hmm.
will be obligated to have like an open house where they offer training to members of VAMA for the jobs that they offer, for the shifts that they offer within their business. And it's a way of growing our labor pool of people that are able to do able to work within our network of cooperative
Yeah.
businesses, and spread the uh, the burden of staffing requirements out among a greater pool of labor uh,
Mm-hmm.
of labor, really. And then it's opt in. It's like if you are qualified to do a job and the job is available, it'd be either first come first serve, and then on that point, it's like based on seniority if two people arrive at the same time, sort of thing.
Right.
And yeah, that's one possibility. But to facilitate that, there would be regular ongoing training that our businesses would supply. So, thinking about the coffee pub idea
Mm-hmm.
and bakery, within that business alone, if we had a coffee pub and a bakery combined, there would be aspects of the there would be jobs to do. Let's say we had a short order grill, you know, so we could do, or sorry, we had a grill so that we could do short order cooking,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we'd have people that would be trained on how to operate the grill and do short order cooks, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'd have people that would be trained to run the drive through, and then we'd have people that are trained on how to do the counter, you know, or do the floor, and then you have
Mm-hmm.
people trained on how to do the bookkeeping, and then you have people trained on how to do the baking, and then you have people trained on how to do the purchasing. And
Mm-hmm.
not everybody who works the floor can do the purchasing because that's a trained position, and that's not just something we let anybody do because that's a very sensitive position. We want to make sure
Right.
that who's ever spending our money is spending it well and spending it wisely and is not going to, you know, buy us a lemon, sort of
That
thing.
well. Yeah.
Um, and at the same time, if you don't know how to operate the grill, I don't want you anywhere near it, because that's a
That's right.
hazard to you and everybody else. But if you're working on the floor and on the counter and the drive-through, and then the opportunity comes to learn how to do the short order cooking, because like that has come up, and then going forward, you can pick up the odd shift as a short order cook if one becomes available,
Yeah.
or if there's a rush and the people who are doing the short order cooking are just swamped with a lot of stuff, you can float in for 10-15 minutes to help with the rush,
Hmm.
help take care of stuff in the kitchen, and you won't be a menace because you'll be trained by the people who are working it at that point,
Yeah.
and they'll have trained you on how they work within their kitchen. And yeah, it's an idea of how we can kind of work together and mesh together, um, as we grow and mature over time.
And so I have a question to that point. So
Mhm.
we've identified that there's different ways that we can, hey, yeah, you know what? We could do it this way, we could do it this way, we could do it this way. How do we settle on a direction of how we want to do it?
Right. So, and that really is the question for how we're going to do things within VAWMA. So, thank you for bringing it up. The Ultimately, I want to leave it up to each individual cooperative business to decide how they structure themselves internally. My
Mm,
preference is for them to use sociocracy, but I'm not going to dictate sociocracy to everybody. I can see there being situations where there might be somebody who comes into our cooperative network of businesses who is themselves more of a producer,
mm-hmm,
in the way that a farmer is a producer rather than they are a general laborer.
mm-hmm,
And um, in a situation like that, I can see them taking advantage of our network of cooperatives in order to gain access to a consistent pool of labor force that they can rely on, that is motivated to work hard, because the way our structure will be set up, um, you will get the base living wage.
mm-hmm.
Uh, if your business makes a crazy ton of money, and can afford to pay better wages, then that business can afford to pay the base living wage plus whatever, is the word stipend
Yep,
correct in this case,
yep,
the to kind of cover the fact that the job and that specific cooperative gets an additional $4 an hour or $5 or
mm,
$10 an hour to keep up with industry standards, whatever is sort of the going rate out there, so that if you have a bunch of roofers who are, for example, used to making $22 an hour, I don't know if they are, I'm just pulling that number out of my head, off out of my butt. Anyway,
yeah,
but and our living wage is 18. So
yep,
in order to get anybody from the roofing industry to even want to consider to work with our network, we got to pay them at least $22 an hour, or we won't have
that's correct.
anybody. Okay, well then, it's the base living wage across VAWMA is $18 an hour. Cool.
Hmm.
And if you're a roofer, you get roofing pay, which is an extra $4 an hour on top of your 18. Problem solved. And then and we'll explore. I've been toying with the idea of like uh, you know what? I'll follow that for a little bit later. That's a bunny
Okay.
trail. The main idea is, in a scenario like that, you would have somebody who is, sorry, going back to the idea of the producer, you got somebody who has like a major business idea, and uh, but they just don't have the capital
Right.
to float it themselves. But
Yep.
they're the one that will make that business happen. Without them, that business idea doesn't come into play.
Mm,
I can see VAWMA having a setup where they would become, not unlike a manager,
mm-hmm,
and then they would have workers that would be incorporated through our network of our union, our pool of laborers, with the caveat that after so many hours of working within uh, that cooperative, they need to be open to being able to buy in and being part members of that. At which point, the producer, though still kind of like fulfilling a management role, like kind of like saying this is where this needs to go. Person A needs to go, to, occupy equipment A. Person B needs to go man the phones. Person C needs to go stand, direct person
Right.
A. That sort of thing. Um, uh, and They might still be in a position where they're calling the shots, but when it comes down to it, there would be like a monthly gathering where like the people who bought in also get to have input on what's going on. And so how that will actually look, I'm actually thinking about a specific person in mind, and I'm trying to figure out how could it work if this guy who could make us millions of dollars,
Yeah.
yeah, as a whole, do so in such a way that he's incentivized to be a part of our network,
Yeah.
and thus we all collectively would make
Yeah.
millions of dollars, but also recognize that he's the individual responsible for making us in millions of dollars. You know, as a producer, does he get a little bit larger slice of the surplus? And I think there's a way to set it up in such a way so we can get those people who do, make $1 million companies, to incentivize them to be a part of our network. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the only downside is that under capitalism, they get to keep the millions that they make. Under our system,
Yeah.
it's distributed amongst everybody based on like the hours that they've worked or the amount that they've purchased, or if they're a producer, based on the amount that they produced. Which is why I'm thinking
Right.
of adding a third category into our VAWMA thing there. And this is
Huh.
brand new. I'm still
Hey, I like that.
working this one out. But that category would be if you are, as an individual, producing literally millions of dollars within VAWMA,
Yeah.
then instead of your slice of the surplus being based on the amount of hours you worked, like the majority of the
Sure.
workers, it would be based on the amount of money that you generated for um, the company. So if
Right.
you made us like $10 million, you would get a slice of that, the 10 million that you helped generate for us,
Yeah.
counted different, separate from the amount of hours that are worked amongst the people who would. It would basically be the pool of producers would be a lot smaller than the pool of workers,
Yes.
and the pool of workers would be a lot smaller than the pool of consumers. But at the end of the day, if and when we make a surplus, um, that surplus then gets split between, I guess at this point it would be four sectors, because the originally it was three,
Mm-hmm.
and of the three, two of those three were patronage for the consumers and patronage
Mm-hmm.
for the workers. Now in this scenario, it would be split up into four sections. Three of those sections would be patronage, split between workers, consumers, and producers. Um, which might also work for us as well if we ended up wanting to incorporate local farmers into our network there,
Yeah.
because they could become producer members of VAMA, and their slice of the surplus would be based on how much food that they got to our restaurant. And the more raw ingredients that they got us, the larger their slice of the surplus would be at that point. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, lots of things. But again, this is all, but let's bring it back to education and training, because at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. uh, and uh, I think the key in a scenario where for something like VAWMA is ongoing education really is the key, precisely because for what you identified before when you were talking to people about, me and my friends are thinking about starting cooperative, and their immediate reaction is like, "Ooh,"
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I know what a cooperative is. They're where all the smelly people live, or I know what a cooperative is. It's
You
where
don't
all
have the
the
money to buy a farm.
I was thinking all the other smelly people. Yeah. Uh, I grew up in the countryside. I know what farms smell like. They're great.
Right?
And But readjusting people's expectations, reasonable expectations uh for what they can expect out of work.
Yes.
Right at the moment, we're all conditioned from the time we're very little to go outside of our home into the world, usually to school, but that's like a precursor for going to our jobs, outside of our home for like hours at a time, where we put on hold our liberty for this, we suspend our liberty for the duration of while we're at our workplaces or at our school, where we're not allowed to go where we want to go when we want to go. We have to
Mm-hmm.
stick where we are told to stay, lest we get kicked out of school or lose our jobs.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that when you were while you're on shift or while you're working a shift for VAWMA, that the expectation isn't that you're going to be able to stick out your entire shift as well. There's going to be that expectation as well. The major difference being is that if you can't, we're going to have a we're going to bake into our business process a way that allows you an escape. If you get to the point where, like, I can't work my shift anymore today, my dog died, or something personal has happened in such a way
Sure.
that I can't separate it from my work life balance, blah blah blah. um, we'll have something in place that says, okay, you know what, there's always somebody on call. There's always somebody out there willing to pick up the shift if a shift is available. And In a scenario like that, are you're not going to be fired. You're not going to lose your job. There will still be the availability of a shift the next time you want to take a
Yeah.
shift. We're going to hope and ask that you do take your shift, and if you aren't capable of taking the shift, I don't know, we'll work out something, because the whole point here is to take is really, it's the old idea of, like, from each according to their ability, to each according to their contribution, which is
Well, and that's
socialism,
kind
right?
of the point, right? Is that you show up to work. If
Uh-huh.
you can't work, you don't get paid. But the more you work, the more you get paid. And the
Mm-hmm.
more you work, the more of the surplus you get to participate in,
Yep.
right?
And even
So I
as
mean
mhm.
it's kind of like one of those, yes, I understand I am sick and I cannot come to work today. Okay, not a problem. You already know that you're not going to get paid for that shift, but
Well,
the
I have
expectation
sick
is
days.
still, well, and again, um there's those caveats and whatnot, but I think the idea though is that it's kind of like the attendance in school, right?
Hmm.
You could not go to school until the last 2 weeks and still pull out a credit. You could go to work the minimum amount of days and still pull in a chunk of your profit because you
Mhm.
worked the minimum amount of hours. And I think that's going to be a conversation for another day because I think
Mhm.
that's where people are inherently good versus people are inherently evil. Evil as in a bracket term, not evil like murderous, evil
Mhm.
as in self-centered. Um, that's a conversation for another day. Um,
Because I would push back
but
on that, even that framing between good and bad, or
yep,
good and evil sort of thing, right? Yeah.
yep, exactly. And I think that's going to be an amazing back and forth, but we will
Hmm.
leave that for another day. But seeing that we are coming up to time, um, I feel like we might even be able to pull this topic of conversation maybe a little bit more into next week, leading into from education of co-op as a whole into education as in the how would VAWMA work as
Hmm.
a co-op. So to what your point was, how the four pillars of structure would work and how those would be paid out. I think that would be a great topic for next week if you are agreeable.
Say the topic again, or topics. We're gonna be.
Um, so continuing our conversation of education, but with
Mhm.
the segue of this week, we've discussed education as far as what is a co-op and how the difference of the branding is working. I know co-op from one way, you know a co-op from
Hmm.
another, and someone else knows a co-op. So there's the educational piece of what is a co-op. And now that we've kind of gone through that framework, next week I think it's continuing that framework of a co-op business is different than the co-op that of housing or from farming. The co-op as a business has four different pillars that you were alluding to, right? So
Yeah.
you have the co-op of the mutual aid, you have the
Hmm.
co-op of the profits, you have the co-op of um the other two pillars that I'm suddenly gapping on all of a sudden.
Yeah,
Uh
so it's mutual aid. It's our labor. It's as a business, we run it democratically, and we have a network of businesses that work together democratically and share
yes.
in the surplus amongst the community.
Yes. So I think that is what we will segue into next week. Um, and so, with that all being said, if people want to become a part of VAWMA, if people want
Hmm.
to learn more and be educated, if they want to learn more about VAWMA as a whole, co ops as a whole, how can they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. I would highly recommend finding our I believe it's public Facebook group on Facebook. It's listed under the Voluntary Association for Work and Mutual Aid, also known as VAWMA,
Mm-hmm.
VAWMA, VAWMA, VAWMA. And it is, you can also go to VAWMA.com. Again, that's www.VAWMA.com, and you can find out some information there. Again, it's still pretty much a placeholder. It's in the process of being worked on, but it is a labor of love and also a labor of somebody with ADHD. So it'll happen when it happens. And we are going to put up there, I believe we have a contact form in there, so you can reach our info at vama.com. And maybe one day we'll have a newsletter which we will be sending out on a regular basis, which brings me to my next round of if you're out there and are interested in helping us form a newsletter, please contact us at info@vama.com, and we will most definitely put you to work because if that's your strong suit, that's certainly not mine. And I would love to have people out there work with us to create something that comes off the ground, because I think at the end of the day, the only thing that's really going to give us an opportunity to change things before it's too late to change things is if we have the vehicles in place that allow for democratic member participation, and if we can create something that's big enough that has a stake in the affairs of the world, then we can be a cog in the machine that big. Then we, as that cog, can say, "Hey, we need to do things differently. We need to do things sustainably. We need to do things in a way that's not going to kill the planet for my children. Thank you very much." And we'd like to do it without an authoritarian stepping on our necks along the way. So, and I think the best way to do that is to make sure that everybody who's involved has a say and has a stake in the process of how things are going to happen. So,
That's awesome.
if that sounds like something you're interested in, join us at vama.com. The more the merrier.
Beautiful. That's awesome. Thank you, James. And of course, my name is Kat. I am a transformational life coach as well as executive coach. So if you are wanting to start your own business, if you think, hey, business owner might be the place for me, and maybe a co op business is something that you want to get started on, I have business education, business administration, as well as executive coaching experience. I can help you get things off the ground. And if you're going to be a part of VAMA, it just means that you have chosen the right stepping spot. You can also find me as a variety streamer on Twitch. In the mornings, I have a morning motivation meditation and coffee with Kat where we do some morning breath work. We do a motivational challenge discussion, and then we end the morning with meditation so that you're starting your day off on a positive note, opposed to listening to all the negativity of the world and starting your day off on a bleh. That being said, you can also join the conversations with my Diablo and Chill stream, where we all kind of hang out and we have discussions about random stuff while I play Diablo with the community. So you can find me on twitch.tv live with advantage. You can also check out all of my contact information and previous VODs at www.livewithadvantage.com. James, is there anything else that you would like to give a shout out to before we hand it off?
Two things. As you
Yeah.
mentioned Twitch, I remembered that we also have a YouTube channel at
Ah,
www.youtube.com/at VAWMA, VAWMA. And finally, and I think this is a good one to wrap it up on, I would just like to remind everybody who's watching that you are indeed, in fact, are awesome. And take that with you, pass it along, and don't forget. I'll talk to you guys later.
awesome. Have a great day on this Monday part 2.